Dr. Neil Lester here. Let's bring him into this conversation since we're talking about black and white face. He's a professor at Arizona State. He's an author and expert in African American literary cultural studies, racial bias and discrimination. He's a friend to the show. Good morning. Welcome back, Dr. Lester.
Good morning. Thank you. What an exciting conversation.
Okay, so Dr. Moody Ramirez asked me would I wear that costume now? So that's a great question, and help me and help my viewers understand this concept of whiteface, because when I wore that costume, I didn't think I was appropriating from any particular culture. I'm in this whatever I am, as Tiffany just said, I'm still a black woman.
Yes.
Despite whatever else I have accomplished in my life, I am still a part of that marginalized community. So I thought, I don't really think that I could appropriate white culture. So am I wrong about that?
Well, in that case, from my perspective, you did not. You didn't put on white face. You put on a costume that was, somebody may not have known it was Marilyn Monroe, but that was exactly. And here's the issue. And I like to go back to what was said earlier this is about historical positions of power. And so when a black person is in white face, in fact, some of those who were enslaved imitated some of their masters and owners by doing cakewalks and dancing. But that was not a power. That was sort of claiming some humanity, some humor, and some community. So I think we have to contextualize it that way. But yes, in fact, black women can appropriate in the same way that others. If Beyonce and Destiny's Child wore these indigenous costumes for one of their videos. So absolutely they can do it. And part of that power comes from the fact that she has money and capital and can buy stuff. So when we're talking about cultural appropriation, we're not just talking about black and white. We're talking about poor and rich. We're talking about old and young. We're talking about men and women. So one of your earlier comments was about this man who wanted to dress up as Grace Jones. I would have gone to that saying men have made an industry out of dressing up as women for the sake of mocking and exploiting them. Look at what some people have done with a whole movie industry that black people love, and has stopped doing that. So that's about power that men have over women, which is very different from what RuPaul does as an art form, as something that is about aesthetics, not about making fun and getting, people to say how edgy it is.
But my friend, and I want to get Dr. Moody Ramirez back in because I got to go back to my Maryland costume because I got to get the answer to that. Dr. Neil said I can wear it. I don't think
I say no. Yeah, you can wear it. Yes.
Yeah, that she can wear it. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, did you whiten your face? I want to go back to the picture.
No, I didn't whiten my face.
She didn't.
Okay, so
my normal makeup. The picture may be light, but no, it's just the wig, is the dress, gloves, and like a boa. Nothing.
Add some more diamonds to it. Add some more diamonds.
I think you would be okay with that.
Yeah,
yes.
go.
And
tell us this concept of white face and how a black woman or black man can appropriate a white character or white face. Help us understand that.
Well, but if you go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'd like for you to address that so that when my students ask me that I can have a response.
But if you look at, which is where the conversation situates itself as in power, those who have in Western society been perceived as surplus and those who are of value. That's what the conversation is about. And Audre Lorde addresses this in her essay where she says we've been defined in terms of profit, in terms of human need, but also those who are based on systemic racism have been perceived as surplus. So that's what the issue is. So race is part of that. Poor people is part of that. Old people are part of that. Because I hope that we talk about that relative to the way in which we have these costumes of those who are incarcerated. So old people, seniors, if you got to be old, Saturday Night Live does this all the time. You got to hobble with a cane. You've got to have a wig on and some glasses. So this has to be opened up beyond race. We have to talk about this intersectionally. And that's what's missing from most of the conversations that I participated in relative to cultural appropriation. It can be done by anybody. And it's a moment of time where you're performing a culture. And I have, a show and tell. I get a lot of my costumes from, that I buy as teaching tools from the Spirit store, but I also go to Goodwill. And I can tell you this is on the Goodwill stash here under seasonal costumes.
Dashiki.
Dashiki.
This is a costume. Do you see what I'm saying? So even when we talk about Lorraine Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun, and Beneatha says, I want to know about Africa, and then she cuts her hair into an afro and gets a dashiki, she is also appropriating because she doesn't understand what Africa is. It's a costume for her. And when somebody can stick this on a rack, and not just one, but all of these, and the tags say seasonal Halloween, this is what we're talking about, and the ways in which Black people are still perceived as extras, as surplus. I don't see this as a costume.
So, Dr. Lester, what does Dr. Moody Ramirez say to those white students in Texas that say, well, what about Black people who go in white face? Is white face meaning you have to put white makeup on, or is it dressing as a white character? Is there a difference?
Well, I'd like to know, first of all, how many instances of that do we have? And we don't have a whole tradition of that. We've got that one movie, White Chicks, that I'm aware of.
They always bring up.
And Eddie Murphy may have done that in Saturday Night Live when he's talking about white people doing this and white people doing that. But that's not a tradition. And no matter how much he appropriates, the power still exists in this country around white people.
Okay.
All you got to do is look at
that answer, Dr. Moody Ramirez.
I'm taking notes.
Look at the New York Times. Is from August 2020. New York Times has a piece, and it's all about visualization and visual justice, and says 80% of the power in this country is still held by white people. Okay. Bring that up, because that's a way you talk about there's nothing to disrupt that power by having you show up. Now, it's a personal decision, but I say for those who think that it's going to be offensive or it's going to be problematic, don't do it. If you're going into that space where you got a question about it, that's your first sign not to do it right there.
So the White Chicks, we got an image of that movie. Yep. So that's, I guess, Black actors, dressing up as white.
The Winans.
The
Wayans brothers. Winans, not the Winans.
Winans are the
gospel singers. Yeah, the gospel singers.
They're the gospel people.
I'm confused.
Yeah, right. the Wayans brothers.
But it's the power, though. It's the power and the ways in which those groups are still systemically oppressed. Mm-hmm. Women are still fighting for their rights to make decisions about their bodies. Black people are still fighting systemic racism. Old people are still, and old people, however we define old, by not looking at, these costumes here. That's what I'm saying. Look at the instance of crimes against people who are old. Look at the ways we discard old people once they get old. And look at witches, for example. You were talking about women. We have nothing comparable to that I'm aware of around Halloween. We bring out the long noses. The witches are flying into things, and we think that's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. There's nothing comparable for that relative to warlocks and men.
Yeah. And Dr. Moody Ramirez, kids, so you heard Regina Hansen say that the Halloween tradition in the U.S. has really evolved into like a kid's, fun kind of holiday. So you see this often with parents grappling with their kids who want to dress up in blackface or, emulate Black characters. Now, the Black Panther creators, the movie, the Black Panther creators came out and said all kids, Black, white, they didn't care about the color, could dress up as the Black Panther, could, paint their faces Black. So if you have a creator of a movie like the Black Panther saying that to the world, does that then give, pass for those parents whose little white kids want to dress up like the Black Panther?
I think it gives a pass. And I actually have some questions for parents to ask when they're choosing costumes. These are just quick questions. Does the culture you're interested in have a history of oppression? Are you benefiting financially or socially from borrowing from the culture? Are you able to remove something when you get tired of it and return to a privileged culture when others cannot? Mm-hmm. So those are the questions that parents need to ask when they're choosing costumes. And so when you're thinking of the Black Panthers, that Black Panther movie, that was actually a very wealthy population. Although they were Africans, that was so if they are emulating that population, they were not from that they would not be considered marginalized. I guess if you look at it from that perspective, but also they have been invited, they have been given permission. So that's another piece of it, another piece of cultural appropriation. When you are invited, then that would be considered appreciation. versus appropriate.
And that's a very contained space when you've been invited into a party,
Yes.
for example, or into a wedding. The issue is when you decide that you're going to take that because you think it's cool to go to the next party.
But well, let me ask you this, Dr. Lester. Even with the Black Panther example, even though the creators have invited kids into this space, if you are a parent of a white kid, the costume, is a leotard or whatever you want to do with the costume. But what about painting the kid's face black?
That to me is a hard no, period.
Yeah.
That's a hard no. And
Even wait a minute, even if the creators are saying we're okay with it, we want kids to have the full experience of the Black Panther.
First of all, the creator can't be the representative for all Black people and how people respond to stuff. In the same way that Beyonce can't. There is no spokesperson for about Black people any more than there's a spokesperson for white people. So what people are bothered by, and I'm less interested in what people are offended by than the fact that this is culturally insensitive. And so for me, we can't take one person to speak up. That's also a commercial success too. The more you can get people to buy that costume, the more money you make. So please don't take capitalism out of it. Capitalism and racism are conjoined twins, as we've had many people say. This is about selling stuff. But as you pointed out, Dr. Ramirez, if you can put this on, and this is very popular, and take it off, but I can't take this off and nobody's going to hire me because I have this hair, that's where the issue of power. And when you're going around, and it's not just costumes, but it's also about these things that are supposed to be cute. These are stuffed animals. This is taking something. And every time I see this, I start looking at how people start thinking of me. So show them and tell them how these are problematic. This is supposed to be a.
Oh, Dr. Lester, you just come with it. Okay,
I'm telling you, these are the receipts. These are the receipts. And sometimes you can't just tell people; you have to show them. That's what I'm talking about.
So those are stuffed animals, right?
These are stuffed animals that you would find in a bedroom. And look at this. And it's not just that it's a banana, but it's a banana with some, one of these hats that you will find people wearing. But also the eyes are all red.
Oh,
no. The eyes are red.
And the big lips.
What that's like.
Look at the lips.
Oh, that is not
the lips. That's what I'm saying.
Good.
Show them. And it's not just one, it's multiples of these where we're smiling. That's what this is about. This is about power and history, which is why we cannot stop teaching people about true history. So let's stop having this conversation stop talking about history under this guise of critical race theory. We need to be critical. We need to raise questions. And we need to acknowledge that this history was built on a foundation of idealism for some people. And those people for whom this was built did not look like us, the three of us on this screen.
No, I love that you said this conversation has to be about intersectionality too, because oftentimes we talk about cultural appropriation just in the context of race, not these other isms that are also important. Let me ask you this, Dr. Moody Ramirez, and I'll ask you too, Dr. Lester. What offends you the most? I think we already know the dreadlock hat and the stuffed animals is on your list, Dr. Lester. But what's on your list, Dr. Moody Ramirez?
Well,
costumes.
I will tell you now, if you're on TikTok, so now they're talking about how Black women are imitated more than any other group. And it's usually they're imitating Black vernacular. It's usually the angry Black woman that they're imitating. And I have an issue with this because when we do it as Black women, we're pointed out as being ghetto. We're pointed out as being hard to deal with. We're pointed out as, well, we don't want them in leadership positions. However, when this is done on TikTok, they're getting likes, they're making money off this, it's monetized, and it's white women who are doing it. So that's my latest rant, and I've been interviewed about that several times. So that's happening more and more, and it's happening on TikTok because you have those short video clips.
And let's not forget that the white women who are taking credit and making money from these dances that Black young girls created. So these are all
14-year-old young girl created a dance, and then somebody else took it over and made millions off the dance. And the young girl didn't get any credit.
I want to go back to your question, Reba. I'm not personally offended by this. I'm always sort of amazed at the ways in which we can hold on to these images that exploit and stereotype folks. And then we say we're committed to issues of diversity. And equality. And those two don't work to me. I mean, back in May after George Floyd's murder, everybody was sort of coming together with a frenzy of podcasts and book clubs and book things to read. and racial justice statements. And I'm saying, but if you're fundamentally looking at humanity as it connects to justice, these things deny humanity to folks. Whether you're poor, you're old, you're differently abled, you're a woman, we have to look at all of those things at once because none of those come separately and individually.
So those don't offend you. Is there any costume on the market today that does offend you, Doctor?
Offensive to me becomes more about a personal thing, and anybody can be offended by anything. I mean, I could sneeze and somebody could be offended.
I want to know what is personally offending you right now in this moment as it relates to these costumes. I mean, everything, Jessica Rabbit's popular right now. What do you think about her?
Well, again, I look at this critically. So I'm not looking at this about personal offensive because this is bigger than me. Okay. This is about people who look like me. Personal offense can be relegated to individuals.
Don't make it personal to you. The people you represent, the people, your classroom, what are your students telling you? What's offending them right now?
Most of my students are at a predominantly white school or white. So I don't know if the stuff that's happening. What's offending me now is that we're conflating critical race theory with American history. That's what's
okay. But yes, that's offending all of us. But I want to say on this costume issue, is there any costume out there that's really offending you right now? And you, when I say you, I'm saying bigger than you.
Can I tell him one that would offend him? There's one where the people dress up like Trayvon Martin.
Oh, okay.
White people, they wear a hoodie.
Yes.
They put on black makeup and then it's on a blood spot here. That really offends me.
That's
because they're depicting Trayvon Martin.
Or dramatizing George Floyd because that can become. And we had a name for the Trayvon. It was called Trayvoning. So that goes to a whole different level of hurt and outrage. So thank you for pushing that and pressing. Somebody will dress up as that. And lynching.
Let me ask you another question about a party that I was made aware of. So a white woman, wealthy, privileged white woman, was having a party, and the theme for this party was white trailer trash. And she asked all the guests to show up dressed as white trailer trash. Does that offend either of you?
Well, should that offend us or should it offend?
But is that appropriate? I mean, it does,
appropriate is
how
inappropriate if so.
It's not appropriate. It's not appropriate, but as far as offending me, if it had been if they had dressed up like black women or black people, I would have been offended. The ones that they have on college campuses, they'll have them dressed up like maids or, people from the Latin.
What about the class issues there? Obviously, there's not a race issue, but there's
So it is offensive.
Mocking poor people.
That's why I mentioned that earlier, that it has to be intersectional when you've got one group that's perceived as surplus and the other as the people that are valued. But see, this is why the conversation has to move beyond where people are individually offensive. That takes away the element of empathy that we should have. I don't like seeing men dressing up as women and making fun, whether it's Flip Wilson or Patrick Swayze or Tyler Perry. I'm not a woman, but I care about women and I try to be an ally. That's what this is about, not about whether I'm personally offended, because any number of things could personally offend me. What about the whole group? And how does this go beyond me to look at things systemically? See, that's the problem. Sometimes we get caught into individual stuff and individual responsibility versus where this comes systemically and historically.
Yeah. That's why that white trash.
Yes, that's problematic. I mentioned that.
That's problematic
because of the
absolutely.
Of the woman who's throwing the party versus now she's mocking poor people. They're white people, but they deserve respect too, right?
Absolutely.
It's very offensive. Very offensive.
It's about the
humanity. Let me ask you, I'm going to run through a list of costumes that are popular this year and just get each of your response to them. And, some parents out there may have already bought these, maybe thinking of buying these. And I want them to know what the leading scholars think about these costumes.
Okay.
The first one is baby marijuana. Let's throw that one up, Rashad. Okay. Dr. Moody Ramirez, any place for baby marijuana in this world today?
Well, marijuana is legalized in many states. So I guess it might depend on the state. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's up to the parents. You have some liberal parents.
Who is that costume for, though? The child doesn't know what that is. That's an adult costume with a child.
That's an Instagram picture, Dr. Lester. That's Instagram.
But that's using the child as a prop. That child doesn't know what pot is. So that's a whole issue about parenting I would be talking about.
Okay. Quarantine zombie. Let's throw that one up.
I actually kind of think that one's okay.
Yeah, I think that one would be okay.
Yeah, I think that's okay because I don't know who that is, and we're all zombie like.
Yeah, you can't mock.
Mocking the quarantine. Okay, you guys say okay to that one. Yeah. All right, child gangster. What do you think of this one?
Well, I don't want the child with the gun.
Yeah,
you can certainly dress in a zoot suit, but I'm glad there's no blackface. But I would take away the gun. We've got too much now with people, mass killings and guns and trying to put guns, even pretending that. Look what just happened on the set of the with Alice Ball. So that's what I'm saying. You have to think critically about these things.
It's true. Okay. I would not want him to carry a gun.
Baby cigarette.
Ugh.
That's ridiculous. Why would you want your child to dress up? That's like the marijuana.
I'm not making this up, really.
And let's just add, see, this is what I'm thinking also. Look who's in the picture. When I go to my spirit store, I look, well, who's the models here? So who is that looking for? And I'm thinking cigarettes are still killing people. So why would you want to dress a child up as a cigarette? That's about the parent, not about the child. The child isn't asking for that costume.
Let me go back to the zoot suit and the kid with the gun. We understand the gun issue, but are you mocking Italians by wearing that, suggesting that all Italians are mafia or mafioso? Is there any issue with that?
Well, I didn't know that was even that. I saw that as a 1920s zoot suit look. And those were black folks of the 1920s and the Harlem Renaissance who had chains hanging down.
Yeah, so, I think anyone could wear that, any culture.
But what if they were specifically like Al Capone?
You would have to tell people, though, I'm Al Capone.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. If
you can't look at it and say,
but that's what I said. Put a little name tag up there if people don't think.
But if they were clearly trying to rep Al Capone, is there any issue with that in terms of, elevating a stereotype about Italians?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want I want them to have all this information.
This is a tough quiz.
Well, but wait.
I got smart people on today because I have tough questions.
But see, what's going to happen, though, is you're going to have a list and then somebody's going to say, oh, I can do this because it's not on her list. See, that's the problem with lists. What I'm saying
there's a problem with lists, but these are some pretty provocative costumes that I needed to get you guys.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Diva prison girl. Let's go to the next one. Diva prison girl.
No.
Prison culture is popular and prison culture is part of the surplus. Look at how we can't get people who have been incarcerated back into society. There's very little rehabilitation. Yes. And look at the ways in which private prisons get more money than education.
Okay.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Okay. Sexy cop.
I would not want my child to wear anything with sexy in the title.
Okay.
Well, and there's too much going on now about cops, police, and brutality and violence, and also violence against women. We got instances where women have been raped sexually violated by police.
Yes.
Okay. Homeless. We got two more. Homeless, hobo. This is real popular. Dressing up as a hobo. We call them hobo.
Back in the day, back in the day.
Okay, that was a very popular, a lot of comedians would dress up as quote unquote hobos.
Well, I hope we evolve so that we start thinking of this as people too, and that is not very humanizing. And keep in mind, that's where blackface came from in this country, from T.D. Rice.
Exactly.
Saw an enslaved person decided he was going to dress up like that with raggedy clothes and do all that.
And then he's got dirt on his face.
And then and then that took on its whole minstrel tradition. So
yes, I would say no.
I don't know that children are asking for these costumes. These look like adult
kids would not want that. I don't think a child would want to wear that.
The last one is Holocaust evacuee.
No, you wouldn't look at that and know what that was. You wouldn't even know.
It's the tag. It's the color. It's the tag. You'd have to be pretty sophisticated.
It's a cute dress.
I kind of thought it was Girl Scout until
Girl Scout.
Yeah.
You know,
I think people need to be more creative. I think we should dress up like a box of Arm& and Hammer or some deodorant. Be more creative.
Yeah, I like those like
costumes. There's nothing creative
costumes
about those. Nothing.
Okay, last question for my tough quiz. What's the last costume that you wore, Dr. Moody Ramirez?
my husband loves Halloween, so I wasn't a Halloween person until I got married. So now we celebrate every year. So, and last year I just wore I actually wore my graduation gown and like some hair. So I guess, I don't know what you would call that.
You were a diva graduate or
Yeah,
something.
a diva graduate. And we stood outside and passed out candy.
Okay, pretty innocuous. What about you, Dr. Lester?
Well, I'm not a costume person, but the one that I would have worn if I decided to do it was a giant spool of hay. And it was like a grass skirt, but it wasn't a skirt. It was giant, and I was going to be a needle in a haystack.
Oh, nice!
Haystack.
You're very
That's about
great.
people. That's about language, and we can do literary characters in my world and not be offended by those. I've once been, a character from the Scarlet Letter, and I was the minister with the black veil. So I had a black veil, and my spouse was Hester Prynne from the Scarlet Letter.
Okay.
So you can do those things and not be what ifing and what if I do this and what if I do this? That's what people say about culture. Oh, what if I eat a taco? Is that stop the what? We're talking about those areas that are not gray and that people don't have to decide. When you're asking the question, there's a problem with it.
Well, bottom line, be respectful of people different than you are.
Yes.
Use Dr. Moody Ramirez's list perfectly. Rewind.
And also purchase products and services from these marginalized groups.
Yes.
And promote these products and individuals on social medias. Give them a shout out.
That's
and learn about
Kendall Jenner, who's getting tequila, but does not have any reference to Mexican culture that produced that.
That's right.
Well, we're out of time. What an interesting and fun conversation with you too. Thank you so much, Dr. Moody Ramirez. Thank you,
Don't forget.
Oh my goodness.
None of these bananas and none of these headdresses, okay?
No. What a lesson in what cultural appropriation is and how we should be thinking about it in a much broader way. And the questions we should be asking before we just buy it off the shelf or make it at home or start smearing, makeup over our faces. Let's be more thoughtful. We can get this right. Like I said, it ain't rocket science. There's some pretty clear lines. We all know what they are. And it's not about crossing the line and asking for forgiveness. Let's not do it in the first instance. So again, thanks so much to both of you for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right, guys.